We are now nearly like halfway into the 2021-2022 NBA season, and everyone's favorite topic to discuss over the course of the season is who's going to win the MVP. And to be honest, this season I feel like it hasn't been discussed as much as previous years, but also at the same time, I don't feel like it's as obvious who's the current MVP right now because there's multiple candidates. But regardless, I just think that makes it that much more interesting. So in today's video, I'll be giving a case for the 3 top MVP candidates in my opinion, then coming to a conclusion on who I think the MVP is right now and who I think will win it. But before we get into the video, I ask you to drop a like on this video as it does help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want daily NBA content. Also, if you want to help me reach my goal of 3,000 subscribers. Also, drop a comment on this video as I do respond to all of my comments. And play that intro. But before we talk about the 3 main candidates, we have to discuss some of the honorable mentions. First, we got Giannis, who is leading his Bucks to the 2nd best record in the Eastern Conference. Giannis is definitely playing like a superstar because he's putting up superstar level numbers while leading his team to an amazing record. Even though they've been dealing with injuries, the only thing holding him back, in my opinion, is voter fatigue, but he's definitely been great enough to be up here with these other 3 candidates. Next honorable mention is Chris Paul. He just has to be here because he's been the best player on the team with the 2nd best record in the NBA. He's not going to win the MVP because his numbers are just not MVP level, as he's only averaging 15 points and 10 assists. If you're wondering why I'm not putting Devin Booker here, it's because he's missed a lot of games with injury. Next honorable mention is Rudy Gobert, who has been absolutely fantastic for the Jazz. I think he's been their best player so far this season. Don't get it twisted. I don't think he's their best player, but I do think so far this season he has been their best player. He's been the best defender in the NBA, at least in the regular season. The past few years, he's just been amazing, and he's leading his team to a top 5 record, so you at least have to mention him. I also have to talk about DeMar DeRozan, who's been playing the best basketball of his career while leading the Bulls to a top 2 record in the Eastern Conference. He's been playing amazing, but I think the thing that holds him back is the fact that he's just not viewed as a superstar like other guys, and I definitely think that will dictate the amount of votes he gets. And the last honorable mention is LeBron, who's just playing out of his mind this season. The only thing holding him back is the fact that the Lakers are just being absolutely terrible right now. But now to talk about the 3 main candidates. First candidate I want to talk about, who I think has a real chance to win the MVP, is Steph Curry. Curry, as we all know, is a top 3 player in the NBA, and many people actually consider him the best player in the NBA right now. And when you factor in that he's also leading the team with the best record in the NBA, his MVP case is looking really strong. Curry's averaging 27 points, 6 assists, 5 rebounds while shooting 43% from the field and 40% from 3. He's not playing as good as he was last season or even prior seasons, but he's still playing well. But if we're being honest, we could argue this is Curry's worst statistical season since his first MVP season. But regardless, it just shows how great Steph is, because he's still putting up MVP level stats and he's still playing like a top 3 player in the NBA. The biggest thing Curry has going on for him right now is the fact that his team is the 1st seed. To be honest, if his team was only like the 2nd or 3rd seed, I don't think as much people would be talking about him as the MVP. But when you're playing this great on a team that's the best in the league, you definitely have an argument, and the argument has to definitely be strong. Steph also has the narrative and the hype around his name to win it, which definitely helps him, because a lot of people thought he should have won the MVP last season. I'm not one of those people, but a lot of people believe that, and the main reason he didn't win the MVP last season was because his team didn't win enough games. But now he's still playing at an MVP level, and his team has been winning games. They have the best record in the league, so I feel like he's gonna get a lot of extra votes just off of that, which is definitely a huge advantage for him. And I think he has the advantage over any other MVP candidate in the league when it comes to hype. If I had to say something that is going against Steph Curry, like for his case to win the MVP, it definitely has to be the fact that his stats are not as impressive as the other two candidates, as his all-around game is not as strong, and his efficiency is not as strong as the other candidates, which is kind of surprising since we are talking about Steph Curry. He hasn't been inefficient, but he just hasn't been the usual crazy elite efficient Steph Curry we're used to. But also there was that huge stretch of games where he was just struggling like crazy, and that kind of like diminished whether or not people viewed him as the MVP. In the long run, I don't think it'll matter because no one's going to remember how Steph played bad for like 10 games. But at his current moment, that is one of the biggest things holding him back. But to be honest, Curry has a really strong case for the MVP, and he could very well win it. The next guy who I want to talk about who has a really good MVP case is Nikola Jokic of the Denver Nuggets, who's actually the guy who won the MVP last season. To be honest, Jokic definitely has to be one of the more underrated superstars in the league at this point, because I feel like everyone knows how good he is, but no one actually keeps up with him throughout the season and sees how he's playing, because he's playing just as good as he did last season. And last season he had a historic season. His team is actually winning games like decently, and no one's really talking about him winning the MVP, even though he has a pretty solid case for it. Jokic right now is leading his undermanned Denver Nuggets team to the 7th seed in the very competitive Western Conference, and he's doing this while putting up the most impressive stats in the league, at least in my opinion, as he's averaging 27 points, 13 rebounds, and 7 assists, shooting nearly 60% from the field and 37% from three. Truly impressive stats. The biggest thing Jokic has going on for him in the MVP race is definitely his stats. He also has a little bit of like a sympathy vote, because like people are always impressed at how a player could carry a team with that like not that much talent to the playoffs, kind of like how they were impressed with like LeBron in 2018, how he carried the Cavs to the 4th seed, or how they were impressed that Curry led the Warriors to the playoffs last season. Jokic right now is leading his Denver Nuggets team without Michael Porter Jr., without Jamal Murray, all the way to the playoffs, and he's doing it in the toughest conference. So I feel like that's definitely helping his case. But I think overall, if he had like a fully healthy team, his case would be stronger, because they'd actually be winning way more games. The main problem with Jokic's case, and the thing that's not going in his direction, is first of all, his team is only at like a 500 record right now at the making of this video. Literally no MVP in history besides like the early MVPs, like no MVP in the last 30 years has won the MVP with a 500 record. They're also only the 7th seed, and as I hinted earlier, he just doesn't have that much hype surrounding his name. He has a decent fan base, he's very liked, but you just don't constantly hear hype about how Jokic is going to win the MVP and things like that. And Jokic definitely does not have as much hype as the other candidates. Some candidates who are even like ranked lower than him have more hype than he does, even though he deserves more hype. To be honest, if Jokic could get his team to be like the 3rd seed in the conference, he would have a really strong case. But I just don't think he's on the level of the other two top 3 candidates. But I do think he's the 3rd most likely to win the MVP at this current moment. The 3rd and final candidate I want to talk about is Kevin Durant, who lately has been getting a lot of low-key hype for the MVP award recently, and he definitely deserves it because he's been playing fantastic while leading his team to the best record in the Eastern Conference and a top 5 record in the whole NBA, while putting up some of the more impressive stats in the league. I believe he's even leading the NBA in scoring right now. He's flat out playing amazing right now and deserves all the credit. So far this season, Durant's averaging 30 points, 8 rebounds, and 6 assists, shooting 52% from the field and 38% from 3. Very impressive numbers. And when you got to talk about things that are in Durant's favor, it's the fact that at least right now, in my opinion, he's putting up the 2nd most impressive numbers in the whole NBA right now. And a huge factor to winning the MVP is obviously your stats. Another thing in Durant's favor is the fact that his team is actually playing winning basketball right now, even without Kyrie Irving and even without James Harden playing his best basketball. he's still leading them to the first seed in the Eastern Conference. That actually is pretty competitive now. Durant actually has hype surrounding his name as well. A lot of people in the NBA community right now either think him or Curry is the MVP, and it's kind of like pretty even between the two. So if I'm being honest, Kevin Durant has a really strong case. If I had to say something negative about Durant so far this season, I genuinely can't think of anything, because he's been consistent all season. His stats are absolutely perfect. You can't ask for better stats than that. His team is winning like clearly enough games. He has the hype surrounding his name. I don't know what you could say bad about him. So I think KD definitely has a really strong case. But to answer the question of who I think the MVP is right now, I think the MVP right now is definitely not Nikola Jokic, because although he has the most impressive numbers and he's doing all that he can, his team simply does not have a good enough record and they're not winning enough games. You can't be the MVP with a 500 record. So that means it falls down between Steph Curry or Kevin Durant. And to be honest, I think Durant is the MVP at this point, because both Curry and Durant are leading their teams to the best record in the respective conference. But the reason I give Durant the edge is because his statistics are significantly better, and he never had like a long stretch of games where he was struggling. He's just been consistently great the whole year, whereas Steph has had some rough patches. Overall, I think most people believe Steph is the MVP right now, but as the season goes along, I think more people are going to start to believe Kevin Durant is, or at least give him some respect when it comes to this conversation. But don't get it twisted. I'm not saying Kevin Durant is, like Steph Curry is way behind Kevin Durant. Like, he's barely behind Kevin Durant. Like, they're basically tied for me. But Kevin Durant, like him being consistent all year, gives him a little edge for me. But to be honest, I think as the year goes on, they're going to be the two main candidates. They're just going to continue to battle it out. I think eventually Kevin Durant's going to win, just because I see him putting on more impressive stats and having a nearly as good record. But if Steph is putting up the numbers he put up last season, then I would choose Steph. But if that's not the case, I'm going KD. But nonetheless, both of them are playing amazing. Don't get it twisted. Anyways, guys, that's it for the video. Let me know whether or not you think KD deserves the MVP. Drop a like on this video to help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want daily NBA content. Also, if you want to know my goal of 3,000 subscribers. Also, drop a comment on this video, as I do respond to all of my comments. And I'm out.